Thanks, Freddie. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first in-person meeting in a long time. We'll start the meeting with Pledge of Allegiance. Ask everyone to please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Here.
Councilmember Ward,
Here.
Councilmember Wirtz, Councilmember Gibbons,
Here.
Councilmember Sears,
Here.
Councilmember Dewey,
Here.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Here. Thank you. We'll go on to our first public hearing, which is a request for a special use permit for outdoor dining and site plan review for Four Hands / Down by the Station at 150 West Argonne Drive. Mr. Hessel, do you wish to enter any exhibits into the record?
I would, Mayor. Exhibit 1 is an affidavit of publication verifying notice of public hearing appeared in St. Louis County. And Exhibit 2 is the affidavit of publication verifying notice of public hearing appeared in the Webster Kirkwood Times. Exhibit 3 is a viewer map showing the property that is the subject of the public hearing as well as surrounding properties. Exhibit 4 is a list of property owners to whom notice of this hearing has been sent. Exhibit 5 is a report of the Planning and Zoning Commission dated October 7, 2021, in which by a vote of 6-0, the commission recommended approval of the request for a special use permit for outdoor use and site plan review for Four Hands / Down by the Station at 150 West Argonne Drive. Exhibit 6 is the subcommittee report concerning the application, and Exhibit 7 is a code of ordinances of the city of Kirkwood.
John, Mr. Hawes, who will present this to the city council?
That would be City Planner 2, Amy Lowry.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As we said, this is a site plan review and a special use permit for outdoor dining and outdoor uses at 150 West Argonne Drive. Which is, the subject site is at the corner of West Argonne and Clay. The little purple symbol there means it is one of our city landmarks. The site is about 9,500 square feet and it's zoned B2. There's some photos from the site. Right now there is a caboose on the site that's attached to the building with this breezeway. This project does anticipate this breezeway will be removed. This is the view of the site from the back. And some views of the yard area behind the building, between the building and the railroad tracks. As I said, this is a subject site. There's also an additional yard area, which is owned by the city. And the city signed a use agreement with Savoy Properties to allow it to improve the yard area with landscaping, new sod, pea gravel, mulch, flower beds, trees, overhead structures for seating and a bar area, playground equipment, a dumpster, bike racks, a sculpture platform, and communal seating for the restaurant and for public use, as well as a public restroom. This is the architectural site plan, which shows some of the improvements. As I said, the breezeway will be disconnected between the caboose and the building. There'll be a deck built up around the caboose. There'll be pedestrian access from Argonne between the buildings. And also from the city parking lot, there will be ADA access up to the caboose and then also to the side of the building. Right now, there are steps in the front of the building, so there's no accessible route into the building. The applicant is planning a bar area with seating, other seating areas, a couple of outdoor coolers, a restroom, and then again in the city area, landscaping and playground equipment and perhaps a sculpture area. So according to Savoy, they're going to regrade the yard area, landscape it, and furnish it with benching and seating. And the coolers and the restrooms will be permanent rail car style buildings. The entire outdoor environment, including the restrooms, will be open to the public. Nothing reserved specifically for the restaurant. And inside the restaurant itself, there'll be a full service kitchen, a bar, 2 restrooms, and seating. Right now, there are 2 residential units on the top floor of the building, and those will remain. Right now, we understand that the residents do park in the gravel behind the building. Savoy has made arrangements for 3 parking spaces at their building at the corner of Madison and Kirkwood Road for those residents to park. According to our code, if they provide parking within 1,000 square feet of the building, then that can be arranged as a substitute parking. The operating hours are still to be determined, but it's going to be no earlier than 7 a.m. and no later than 1 a.m. And they propose outdoor entertainment, both live and recorded, but no later than 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 11:30 p.m. Friday and Saturday. And they propose they could employ up to 15 to 30 full-time workers. This is a site plan with the accessible paths that I talked about. Also the landscape plan that they propose, they will be saving some of the trees on site, but then planting additional trees. And this is just an illustration of what they think the overhead structures will look like between the buildings and then the bar and seating area. Again, the overhead structure from rear view. And these are just illustrations of some of what the rail car, restroom, and coolers may look like. All of this will be approved by the Architecture Review Board and the Landmarks Commission. Lighting plan. And then some of the considerations for site plan review and for special use permit for outdoor dining. Are there reasonable conditions that can be placed at the use of this specific site that will ensure that it doesn't substantially increase traffic hazards or congestion, substantially increase fire hazards, adversely affect the character of the neighborhood, adversely affect the general welfare of the community, and overtax public utilities. And then there are 12 additional review criteria in section 2520E, and then also site plan criteria in section 2519H. The subcommittee had discussed issues about what the occupancy of the building would be. They anticipate the restaurant to have 60 to 75 seats. The fire marshal did say that occupancies over 100 customers would trigger additional fire safety requirements. Deliveries to the site will be from the west side, from the city right of way. And we already discussed the residential parking, residential tenant parking will be provided off-site. The power lines will be buried in the yard area. It will require MSD review. And the subcommittee discussed lighting for bicycle racks and the lockers. And they also discussed how the sanitation will be taken care of so that it does not affect the city parking lot. The conditions of note, P&Z suggested a shared parking agreement for the 3 required parking spaces, as I discussed. A public use easement for the outdoor area so that it's clear that the public would be able to use the private property. The subcommittee or the P&Z suggested that signs be installed in the yard area to indicate that the seating areas and the restrooms were open to the public. And then just the outdoor entertainment hours. And then finally, the Landmarks Commission and the Architecture Review Board will review all signs and building architecture. So we're at the public hearing tonight. The applicant is available for questions, as am I.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Does the applicant wish to say anything, make a presentation before we go to council questions?
Everybody doing? Good. Thanks for having us tonight. Amy, thank you for the introduction. Appreciate it. Let me start by saying that we're just really incredibly excited about this
Just
project.
name and title so everyone knows
Oh,
who
thank
you
you.
are.
It was the next thing on my notes here. My name is Drew Lisinski. I'm with Savoy Properties. Thank you for that. And I guess I can jump straight into the next portion, which is that Savoy Properties has a lot of deep roots in Kirkwood. But I live in Webster, so don't hold that against me. But we own a lot of commercial buildings here in Kirkwood. We've completed some new construction projects also downtown here. And I've had an opportunity to be a part of these projects over the last few years. The Madison condominiums, the Barclay condominiums, and then out in progress Hutton residences. So for me, I love being a part of these projects. I really do. And I think the biggest reason why I enjoy them so much is that I, as a Webster resident, get to be a part of the Kirkwood community. For me, that's really special. And really, that's how we approach all of our projects. Our conversations start and we first discuss how a project will engage and benefit the community. And I think we did that here, most definitely. For this project, we're very proud to be partnering with Kevin Lemp, owner and operator of Four Hands Brewing Company. We feel like Kevin and his team are a perfect fit for this project, as well as for downtown Kirkwood. We've also partnered with Kara McKetty with Eddy Design Group. Kara and her team have done just an extraordinary job of creating a design to match the down by the station feel and atmosphere. They've done all of this really while keeping in mind the historic nature of the building. And for the outdoor landscape, we've partnered with DG2 Landscape Architects. And they've put together really a very functional and thoughtful landscape design utilizing Missouri native plants and vegetation. We've also partnered with Castle Contracting to help with the civil engineering on the site as well as the site work itself. To share just a little bit more detail on our vision for the project, we'll have a kitchen, we'll have a full service restaurant inside, which will be open year round. The outside patio will have a covered section and it'll be more of like a 3 seasons attraction, or really as long as the weather will permit us to utilize the space. With the outdoor yard space, we'll have various types of benches, seating and tables, all of which will be open to the general public. We will also be adding a 4-fixture, as Amy said, fully plumbed restroom that will be constructed from a converted rail car container to keep consistent with the down by the station atmosphere. The restroom will be open during business hours and available also to the general public. Some of the other community-based features I think that are definitely worth talking about here are the permanent installation of the art feature in the backyard area, occasional live entertainment indoor or outdoor, artistic playground spinners for the kids, green space for families to play and interact, and of course the trains that frequent the tracks as entertainment for us all. We envision people will spend time there being with friends, being with family, all while enjoying and engaging with the Kirkwood community. We're excited to continue the history of the building and see down by the station really just back on the map. Our vision for this is for Four Hands down by the station to be a destination for Kirkwood residents and visitors alike. So at this point, I would open it up to questions. Be happy to answer anything we can.
Drew, do we have any questions or comments from the council? Start on this side. All right.
I just had one quick one. You mentioned there might be some live music sometimes. And where will that be? Because at one point there was a little bandstand or something.
Yeah, so we haven't determined exactly for the outdoor space where that's going to be, but ideally that would be on the private section of the property. We've kind of eyed a couple of spots, but haven't come to the final determination on where that is.
else from council? Council-
Yes, but I think for Amy. It said that the recommendation came with a proposal that we have an easement to allow, to make it clear that there's public use of the private property. And I just wanted to get some more detail out of that. Does that mean the bathroom that would be private? Is there more things that are private property that the public will be using?
Yes, the applicant is going to allow members of the public to come onto their section of the outdoor space, use the restroom, sit there. They've said if you wanted to bring your takeout from Billy G's from across the street and come sit on their property and eat it there, that they're willing to do that as well.
And I imagine that's all outdoor.
Yes, for the outdoor
Okay,
section, not
so
the
it's-
indoor.
It's the
building.
private, it's the tables and the restroom that are private property, but the easement allows for public access.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Here, I did have one question. May be able to answer this regarding parking spaces.
Mhm.
That's stipulated in the residence lease.
I have not been able to get an answer to that question as to whether that's stipulated in their lease that they can park back there. Our codes, our parking code says that we have to have 1.5 spaces per unit. So that's where the 3 spaces come from. From what I understand, there's only one person living in each unit, so 2 total.
Bounce off of that for a minute. Looked to me like there wouldn't be parking back there any longer.
Correct,
There, even if it
correct.
Even
But
if it weren't in the lease, at least from the city's perspective, there won't be parking allowed there.
that is correct. So I am not sure what their lease specifically states.
All right. We have anything else from council? Okay. All right. Do we have anyone wishing to speak on this?
Mayor and council, we have no request to speak on this.
All right, very good. Do you have a call? Yeah, come on up, sir.
Greetings. My name is Jeff Sanders. I'm a resident of Kirkwood. My address is 228 Sugar Creek Ridge Drive. I also own the building at 200 West Argonne, which my tenant is head to toe dancewear. I've owned the building since the early 90s. I'm enthusiastic about the project. I think it's a terrific plan. There's a lot of good aspects to it. Our problem is going to be parking. I don't see where either P&Z or anything that we've seen tonight is really addressing the parking issue. 75 to 100 patrons. We know they're not going to be full all the time, but where are these people going to go? If you're going to serve that many people, I don't know where you're going to park your employees. I don't know how many employees it takes to serve 75, 50, or even 25 people. You know, currently Billy G's is parking next door at 206. Some of their employees are parked down Argonne in front of St. Peter's. Our parking spots that are owned by the city, there's spaces, but obviously that's paid parking. You're gonna run this during the daytime on top of what's going on at Billy G's. We have to do something for public parking in downtown Kirkwood. If we don't have a plan to build a parking garage, we need to be doing that immediately. We can't continue to approve these kind of projects without having some place to park these people, both patrons and employees. That's all I have.
Sure.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, any final questions from council? All right, well, with that, this public hearing is closed and the item will be on our new business agenda for consideration, our next meeting on November 18th. Thank you. Go to our second public hearing, which is a request for zoning code text amendments regarding parking rates for educational institutions. Mr. Hessel, do you wish to enter any exhibits into the record?
I would, Mayor. Exhibit 1 is the affidavit of publication verifying notice public hearing appeared in the St. Louis County. Exhibit 2 is the affidavit of publication verifying notice public hearing appeared in the Webster Kirkwood Times. Exhibit 3 is the report of the Planning and Zoning Commission dated October 7, 2021, in which by a vote of 6-0, the commission recommended approval of zoning code text amendments regarding parking rates for educational institutions. And Exhibit 4 is the memorandum from Mr. Raish regarding the staff-initiated text amendment for educational facility parking rate. And Exhibit 5 is the Code of Ordinances of the City of Kirkwood.
Thank you, John. Mr. Hawes, who will present this to the city council?
Be Jonathan Raish, Planning and Development Director.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So this is a zoning, whoa. All right, sorry. This is a zoning code text amendment request, staff initiated, as was mentioned, focused on educational institution parking rates. So this was generated recently with staff's discussions that we've had with Kirkwood School District and their planned various campus improvements, which some of them do include expansions of some of their various school facilities at all levels. When we first started the conversations with the school district, getting ready for plan review and all that like we usually do, we talked about parking amongst other things, and we quickly realized in discussions with them that the new parking rate that was part of our new 300-page code adoption in February it appears to be one thing that we took our consultant's recommendation on and didn't test out amongst the hundreds of pages, and it looks like it needs some adjustment. So we've reanalyze that, and what the issues that we identified in our discussions were that the new parking rate does not differentiate between various levels of school. So previously our code had different rates for elementary school, middle school, and high school. We did ask our consultant to try to simplify things as much as possible. And so we did consolidate quite a few things. This was one case where I think we tried to do too much consolidation. There are obviously different parking demands at different levels of school. So that was one issue identified, that we do need to actually to differentiate between these levels of school. The second issue was that the new parking rate, the previous code as well, evaluated parking multiple ways for a couple different levels, meaning we would look at the number of employees in classrooms, but we would also look at the maximum capacity of the largest assembly area, whether it be a gym or football stadium, what have you. So we would evaluate those items independently and say that the greater of those would apply, which makes sense, assuming that usually all schools in session or the football stadium is full, typically not both things at once, right? However, the new code parking requirement required both parking spaces for classrooms, 6 per classroom, and 1 for 4 seats, 1 for 4 seats out of the largest assembly area. So it was additive. We realized that really should not be the case in our opinion. Third item is that former parking rate prior to February required a rate of 1 per 3 seats. I'm sorry, the one that is in place today. Hold on, I'll get there. The code prior to February required 1 parking space per 3 seats in the assembly. It was changed in the new code to 1 per 4. And in this analysis, we did compare to other cities to see what was more reasonable and more likely. And the current rate of 1 per 4 seats seemed to be more in line with what should be required. So the recommendation here tonight adjusts for that. And lastly, in our discussions with the Kirkwood School District, they did also request an option that a parking demand study by a professional engineering third party would be able to be submitted by the district if they felt like the normal parking rate didn't apply to whatever project they were doing, because there were certain circumstances whether it was a lab that was serving other classrooms as an accessory or something like that. You know, there just could be certain issues that some of them we can't even predict right now. So they just requested the ability in discussions with staff to provide a parking demand study that would either be reviewed by staff or by the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. And I'll go through, we did actually use a blend of that as we work through the Planning and Zoning Commission for the recommendation tonight. I will also point out, so this applies to all educational institutions, private or public. It would apply to new schools. However, the majority of projects that we anticipate seeing are school additions. And in those cases, it's one of the reasons that we did focus on providing a metric based on classrooms rather than population of schools, number of students, or especially at the high school age, students of a certain driving age or a grade level, which had been used previously, was that when you're talking about additions onto existing campuses, it's a much, and I don't want to say simpler just because I wanted it to be easier on us, but it is a much cleaner calculation and question to ask rather than saying, well, what's your junior class population going to be when you add these 6 classrooms? They may not know that, and they may also say our intent is to have no change, right? So we figured a physical change like classroom is something that's really easier to evaluate, and based on our the 6 spaces per classroom was the rate that the consultant recommended. So we did stick with that with the minor adjustments. All right. So I will go through these and I'll try to be brief. I did want to provide a comparison through each 3 school levels with the pre-February 2021 code, our current code that sits today, and what's being proposed. So the former code was for elementary schools, required 1 space per employee plus 1 space per classroom. Current code is 1 space for every 4 seats in the largest auditorium or assembly area, plus 6 spaces per classroom. So a significant increase from what we previously required. And what we're proposing is, in this instance, 1 space for every classroom plus 1 space for every employee. So going back to the former code, but then adding the option for a parking study that may be submitted for review to establish a supplemental parking rate. And what that per section 2565C, what that really means in the code, there is a section that was added for other uses with variable parking rates to allow the approving body, and this is where it's a blended proposal tonight, is that because educational institutions, schools are permitted uses, that parking demand study for elementary schools would be reviewed by staff because staff reviews the permitted use site plan now. So we would review that. That's what Planning and Zoning Commission recommended at the elementary school level, and you'll see it's different at the high school level. But for middle school parking, the former code required 1 space for every 3 seats of auditorium, gym, or stadium at maximum capacity, or 1 space per employee plus 2 per classroom, whichever is greater of those 2 calculations. Current code, again, it's the same for all levels, 1 space for every 4 seats in the largest assembly area, plus 6 spaces per classroom. What's being proposed is actually a blending of those 2. So keeping the 1 space for every 4 seats in the current code, or 2 spaces for every classroom plus 1 space for every employee from the former code, whichever is greater. And then again, the same alternate, the option to provide a parking demand study, which would be submitted for review, again, in this case by staff. Lastly, at the high school level, this one was really complicated, in my opinion, previously. 1 space for every 3 seats of assembly area, or 1 space per employee plus 2 space per classroom, or 1 space per employee plus 25% of the average sophomore class, 35% of the average junior class, and 50% of the average senior class, whichever is greater. So we calculate those 3 scenarios, figure out which is greater. That was in the code for a long time. Anyway, it could cause a lot of challenges. So Again, the current code simplified that or attempted to simplify it, maybe oversimplified it, 1 space for every 4 seats in large auditorium plus 6 spaces per classroom. However, again, the only proposed change from what's in the code today for high school to what we're proposing now is not saying assembly plus classroom, we're saying assembly or classroom. And then the second change is alternatively, a parking demand study may be submitted. However, the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend a change to this because of the complexities of high school parking and the driver's age and the Planning and Zoning Commission's opinion that some public process should be a part of it, public input should be a part of it. What their recommendation was that the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council would review any request for alternate parking requirements at the high school level. So that the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend with those changes, those revisions to the various 3 levels. We're here, it is a text amendment to the zoning code, so it does require a public hearing. That's why we're here tonight. And then we would welcome feedback and questions from the council and consideration of the ordinance after that.
Thank you, Jonathan. Questions or comments from the council? Councilmember Ward.
Jonathan, I'd like to know for those campuses that have a natatorium, was that created under the farmer code or the parking requirements for that?
When the natatorium was installed at the high school, that was done under the former code. Was that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it was considered an auditorium?
it would have been an assembly room area. And honestly, on the high school campus, the driver there is the football stadium. It's 2,100 or something like that seating capacity. So you look at the greatest assembly area. And that's the one of that calculation that gets counted.
Well, the driver of complaints to me for those folks living in what I'll call the deceit. Is that it gets used 7 days a week, morning, noon, and night.
Mhm.
And very little of the campus parking gets utilized by that facility. And that concerns me. And those are folks who have a very thick skin because they've grown up with basketball and football and hockey or soccer, feel like all of those sports. So this is a new irritant that's peculiar to what we had in the past. And I'm just wondering if there's a way for us going forward that concern.
So I don't know that I'll have an answer for you tonight. I mean, my initial reaction is that particular building is already built and approved and installed, right? So what we have to look at with the parking code going forward, and really what we're limited to is changes in the future, right? We've actually, without the natatorium, there are multiple campuses, the high school is one of them, that is underparked. If we were to require it by former, current, or proposed code, they would not meet those metrics for the whole campus, right? And that's why I made the point of what we're doing. What we do now is we park what's being added, because especially for something like a public school, going back and saying, reevaluate your whole school, it would not go well. So I will say, we've had conversations with the school district. Obviously, they are limited in land area, like everyone on the site. And so they will, with the high school specifically, they will have to add parking spaces with their upcoming project. And they're looking at that from every angle right now. So It
Well,
is,
that's why, that's wondering if there's the opening there to absorb some of the natatorium part.
right, that's exactly where I was going with that. Absolutely. So I think whether the classroom, we will be requiring it because of the classrooms being added, but certainly there will be other benefits from doing that, right? The natatorium or any other user will get that benefit as well. So, you know, at the current code with their current proposal, they're looking at needing to add 90 spaces. So that's not insignificant. So that will be utilized by every user there. So yeah.
Else from council, Councilmember Wertz? Councilmember Sears?
Thank you. I'm going to wager that under that former code, that was never, no one ever calculated that. Nobody ever ran that formula, just because.
I would take the same bet. Yeah.
Under the proposed code, have we established that under the new scenario? Have we applied that to the current and planned development of the high school? So how did that come out?
Yeah, so for the expansions to the high school, we have applied it to, again, just to the addition. So if we go back, we did run the numbers and we did some assumptions on data that the school district gave us. And taking each level of class, I mean, they were, I don't remember the numbers, not close to meeting it, right? And calculating it based on those populations of class. With the proposed code, that is what the school district, what I mentioned earlier is that's what they are, the direction they're headed now in planning to meet the proposed code. To be honest, there's no way they will meet the current code. It's just not feasible. So the proposed code is the 90 because of the additional classrooms. That would be the 90 extra spaces. They are scrapping to make that happen now, and so they're having those serious conversations. And the other level, are you just high school mainly concerned about, or you asking
No,
about?
that's all. That's all
Okay,
I need to
yeah,
know about.
okay.
And then to Wallace's point about parking, I assume you're talking about a problem with street parking. And so I think that's the only place, control of street parking is the only place that council would have any say in the future about parking there. You know, you could limit hours. I'm not suggesting that we do it, but that would be I think the only way would be to allow parking on other streets where there is none, and
Well,
disallowing
I don't
parking.
negotiate for the school district for that.
and
They were to grant right of way and easements, you could put diagonal parking the length of Darty Ferry and the remainder of the Copan lot to Darty.
True. Another point I wanted to make was that, and I bet I haven't seen the plan. Do parking, probably not near the natatorium. I think people are going to still park on those streets, no matter if if the school district built a huge garage on the other side, they'd probably still park up and down those streets.
I can tell you they have not located the location, but they are looking at every corner right now. I spoke with them today again, that the location has not been, for the parking, has not been solidified. I know they are looking at a option near the natatorium, but it's just not,
I guess.
I mean, that's not our, it's
Well,
not
no,
our call.
It's nothing to look at. I'm just
Yeah.
pointing out that I think since the natatorium is shoved over to one side, that's
Right.
where people are going to park, and they're going to park. They're going to park on the streets because they're closer than the Essex lot or the Ferry lot.
I will say diagonal parking off a street while we have it in Kirkwood, backing out onto the street is not always for younger drivers, especially not always a recommended condition.
Yeah, it's angle sensitive. I mean,
You can do back end only, which
Right.
is at least you aren't backing out into traffic.
All right.
besides for faster launching.
Anything else, Councilmember Sears?
No, that's
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dewey, anything? Councilmember Zimmer, anything? Okay. Thank you,
All right,
Jonathan.
thank you.
Do we have anyone wishing to speak on this?
I do not show anyone wishing to speak on this.
All right, very good. Any final council questions? All right. With that, this public hearing is closed and the item will be on our new business agenda on November 18th. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Amy, for the prior one. Now we will go to public comments.
The public comments portion of the meeting is an opportunity for the city council to listen to comments from citizens. It is not a question and answer session, and the city council will not respond to comments or answer questions during this period. The mayor may refer any matter brought up to the city council to the chief administrative officer or city clerk if action is needed.
Thank you. David, we have anyone wishing to speak?
Mayor, I do not have any requests for public comments at this point in time.
Thank you very much. We will move on to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
For a second? And as Councilmember Sears asked earlier, he would like item A removed and put the. and-
I withdraw that. I thought Wallace, I was just preempting Wallace's.
All right. Okay. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? All right. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Say no, motion passes. Go to unfinished business, Bill 10900.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance amending and readopting the provisions of Appendix E, Personnel Rules and Regulations of the Kirkwood Code of Ordinances.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz, Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes.
A bill passes. Bill 10901.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance appropriating $8,100 from the Equitable Sharing Fund balance to the training account for registration fees for police department training.
Questions or comments? None, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward, Councilmember Wertz, Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes.
A bill passes. Bill 10902.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance amending the Kirkwood Code of Ordinances, Chapter 17, Article 5, Section 17-74, obstructing public places.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz, Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes.
Bill passes. Bill 10903.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance amending the Kirkwood Code of Ordinances, Chapter 17, Article 5, by deleting Section 17-82, solicitations in its entirety, and inserting a new Section 17-82, standing in streets, roadways, highways, and certain medians prohibited.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward, Councilmember Wertz, Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes.
Bill passes. Go to new business, Bill 10904.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance appropriating donations from Lowe's in the amount of $8,250 from the grants and donations account to the equipment account, project number PD 2206, for 3 license plate readers for the police department.
Is there a motion for approval? Second? We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on the bill? Councilmember Gibbons.
This just is. Down there doing? How did the?
I'll be glad to answer that. The police department is aware of a community grant program through Lowe's. And they basically mentioned that they could use these and Lowe's said, we'll provide the funding for it.
Anything else on this? Right, then all in favor of first reading, please say aye. Opposed, say no. Motion passes. Resolution 104-2021.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution accepting the quote of Schaefer Electric Company Incorporated in the amount not to exceed of $66,000, which includes a contingency of $6,000 for the purchase and installation of an automatic transfer switch for the ice rink and authorizing and directing the Director of Procurement to issue a purchase order.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions or comments on the resolution? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz, Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Move on to city council reports. Does anyone have anything? Councilmember Ward.
Yeah, I'd like to report that Councilwoman very grateful for the people and a great year right now. Oz had some very
Thank you for representing us. Anything else on this side? Councilmember Gibbons.
Russ, myself, and Peg Weathers had a meeting with Governor's Liaison here in the St. Louis about trying to find some funding for the second train to be able to run from January until June 30th. We're going to be putting together a proposal for the
Anything else from council? All right, seeing none, Chief Administrative Officer report.
Well, yes, first of all, I do want to echo Councilmember Ward's thoughts on the employee recognition that we had today. These folks have dedicated a significant part of their lives to service for the citizens of Kirkwood, and we had a very nice dedication luncheon today, and we're excited to thank these folks for their dedication and their fine service. So I do have one report beyond that, and that is an application for a temporary outdoor promotional variance from Taleo Coffee, 132 West Monroe Avenue, for a Christmas market event on the parking lot on December 3rd, 2021, from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And this does include a fire pit that's been approved by our fire marshal. He looked at the specifics there and did approve that. So in this request would require city council approval by voice vote.
We have a motion for approval.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments on it? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Say no. Motion passes. City Attorney report.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
City Clerk report.
I have nothing to report, Your Honor.
Oh, okay, all right. Makes it easy. With that, the next meeting of the City Council will be at 7 p.m. on November 18th here in City Hall. And this meeting is